My name is Charles Augustus Lindbergh. I was born on February 4, 1902, in Detroit, Michigan. I became famous for making the first solo transatlantic airplane flight in 1927. Before I took to the skies, I was raised on a farm in Minnesota. My mother was a lawyer and my father was a congressman. I studied mechanical engineering at the University of Wisconsin before leaving school to pursue my interest in flight. I also went to Lincoln, Nebraska, where I made my first solo flight in 1923. After that, I became a barnstormer, or a daredevil pilot, performing at fairs and other events. I enlisted in the U.S. Army in 1924 and trained as an Army Air Service Reserve pilot. I later worked as an airmail pilot, flying back and forth between St. Louis and Chicago. In the 1920s, a hotel owner, Raymond Ortega, was offering a prize of $25,000 to the first pilot to make the journey from New York to Paris without making any stops. I wanted to win this challenge and enlisted the support of some St. Louis businessmen. Several others had tried and failed, but this didn't deter me. I took off from Roosevelt Field in Long Island, New York, on May 20, 1927. Flying a monoplane named Spirit of St. Louis, I crossed the Atlantic Ocean. I landed at Le Bourget Field near Paris after 33.5 hours in the air. During my groundbreaking trip, I had traveled more than 3,600 miles. Upon my arrival, I was welcomed by more than 100,000 people who came to see aviation history in the making. Large crowds enthusiastically greeted wherever I went. I also received many prestigious honors, including the Distinguished Flying Cross Medal from President Calvin Coolidge. I dedicated much of my time to promoting the field of aviation. Traveling around the country, I flew my famous plane to different cities where I gave speeches and participated in parades. I became an international celebrity, and he tried to use that fame to help aviation and other causes I believed in. During a trip to Latin America, I met Ann Morrow in Mexico, whom I wed in 1929. The next year I taught her how to fly a plane, and we both enjoyed the privacy that flying afforded us. Together we charted routes for commercial air travel around the world. We started a family with the birth of our first child, Charles Augustus, Jr. At only 20 months old, my son was kidnapped from our home in 1932. The crime made headlines around the world. We paid the $50,000 ransom, but sadly our son's dead body was found in the nearby woods weeks later. After moving to Europe, I was invited to tour German aviation facilities by Nazi leader Hermann Göring. Concerned that German air power was unbeatable, I became involved with the America First organization, which advocated that the United States stay neutral in the war in Europe. My position on the war eroded the public support, and some believed that I had Nazi sympathies. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, however, I became active in the war effort, working with Henry Ford on bombers and acting as an advisor and test pilot for United Aircraft. After the war, I wrote several books, including A Flight in Life and The Spirit of St. Louis, which won the 1954 Pulitzer Prize for biography or autobiography. I also lobbied for environmental preservation. In my later years, my wife and I moved to the Hawaiian island of Maui. Lindbergh died of cancer on August 26, 1974, in his remote Maui home. He was survived by his wife and 5 living children, John, Lan, Ann, Scott and Reeve. Reports surfaced in 2003 that he had 3 other children with a German woman with whom he reportedly had a long-term affair. Despite any personal controversies, Lindbergh is credited with helping to usher in the age of commercial aviation. His incredible acts of courage continue to inspire others. His grandson, Eric Lindbergh, recreated the flight that made his grandfather famous in 2002.